Welcome to Monday Morning Coffee with Inside the Firm. Each week, our hosts will be interviewing local, regional, and national business leaders to give you an inside peek into how they lead their business to success in the ever-competitive business climate.
Welcome to another edition of Monday Morning Coffee. I'm your host, Alex Gore. I'm here with Cody Farmer of Mainstream Corporation. And to my knowledge, he's a passive building expert. Cody, welcome to Inside the Firm.
Hey, Alex. Appreciate it.
Would that describe you?
Yeah. Aficionado, expert, passioneer.
Yeah.
Yep. Passive House.
How did you get started in this?
You know, I drank the Kool-Aid in 2010. I was doing a master's degree up at CSU. Yeah. And one of my engineer buddies, a senior guy, gray hair, long hair, kind of looked like Gandalf. He said, hey, you got to check out this Passive House thing. It's coming in from Germany. It targets energy load, and it's the easiest way to green. And I was sustainability.
Yeah.
Changed everything.
So this was in college, and then you just turned. What were you going for?
Yeah, so it was a master's in sustainable construction, basically. Sustainable building construction management. But along the way, it's a lot of project management, a little bit less than green than I thought. So I actually took the Passive House training, the Certified Passive House Consultant training in 2010, right before Passive House International and Passive House US kind of split.
Yeah, okay. So is there kind of different certifications now that they're split, or?
Yeah, that's a great question. They're very related, almost as if FIAS, which is the U.S. Institute, is a little more climate specific. They were able to kind of get involved with the government programs a little easier than the internationals. Both of them are the easiest path to like net zero and really accurate energy model predicting, which is, as an investor, the reason why I turned to Passive House was because of accuracy. Believe it or not, Alex, the modeling programs we use right now for system sizing are not proven or tested in their accuracy. So they're kind of a scatter blot of accuracy. If it was a dartboard, let's say, you'd have darts all over the place.
Gotcha. What is the difference between net zero and Passive House? And what is Passive House trying to achieve?
Yeah, that's great. So Passive House is a study of how to eliminate the losses from any given building envelope, including the energy usage. So it's basically a study of how to remove all the losses from the building through insulation, through detailed connections. And the difference between that and net zero, let's say, is net zero, you can claim you're net zero, but still have a gas connection to the house, let's say. And in Passive House, it's really BTU and energy input specific. And again, it's based off of accuracy. So the closer you get to this Passive House standard, the less you have to do to take the building completely off-grid or net zero, including no gas connection. So it produces all the energy that it would need through calculation.
So I read a lot. Lean manufacturing is a concept that's out there, and one of the concepts of lean is eliminating waste. Passive Houses seems like it's just eliminating waste, making sure waste doesn't happen. Is that one of the main goals? You know, I'm translating it into a different speak, but
yeah, it's definitely about looking at waste energy. For example, all the shower heat that a human could generate in a passive house would be recovered, and we would take the temperature of that and send it to the bedrooms, let's say. So we're really not wasting very much at all. That's a great comment about lean.
Okay, so let's dive into the nitty-gritty. Well, actually, before we go into the nitty-gritty, I thought that was interesting that you said the modeling programs some of them aren't accurate, or it's a scatter block of accurate.
That's right.
Which ones are you referring to? Because there's ResCheck, ComCheck, HERS rating. There's another one. I'm sure there's a bunch of other ones. Are those the ones that you're talking about?
Yeah, manual J's and all this.
Yeah, exactly.
The
JDS.
reality is that we've allowed so much error into the building models because we didn't know how to get them so accurate. They had so many losses in them that we kind of allow the losses as a larger input or even a larger error of margin.
Yeah.
So there's not really another energy program or industry that takes their modeling and says, gee, we just modeled that building. How close or how accurate was our energy model? Passive House does. So Passive House Institute, Passive House Institute US, they have conferences every year, and you'll always find some tracks that are talking about as built, as modeled, how accurate.
Right. That's interesting because I didn't know that. And I'm aware of these concepts. We have these kind of checks on different buildings depending on what the jurisdiction wants or what the client wants. So what is the program that Passive House uses? What's it called?
Oh, so there's PHPP, which is Passive House Planning Package. And then the Institute in US uses a little bit more beefy program with hydrothermal modeling, which is called WOOFY Passive. So two different
WOOFY
types.
is the one I was trying to think of. Yeah. I heard that one's more complex and hard to do.
They're both complex and hard to do.
Okay.
Yeah, true talent to do those programs.
So dive into them. What are you inputting into this program? So you get the drawings from the architect. You get, what do you get? A Revit model, PDF. How do you start that process if someone's coming to you?
That's a great question too, because there's a lot of entry points. I'm sure you agree as an architect. Sometimes you get a napkin drawing or, hey, I bought this program. And the truth is that we need the very basic footprint and design. And because we're going to let the energy model tell us kind of the vernacular, tell us how that building wants to be oriented. And I guess that's really the passive nature of it, is this energy modeling program is going to teach us through any given building what our free heat is, what our free cooling could be, what's the best orientation to grab those items, free heat and free cooling. So is there too much windows? Wait a minute, what about this window? It's $20,000 more. Is it worth that? We input all those things and we have a conversation with the energy model. And as I'm looking over at this dartboard in your awesome garage here, I would say that Passive House is the practice of getting the center bullseye. And so once you get in that first green circle, that red circle becomes much more attainable. And I would say that's with kind of net zero calculation, is that with a PHPP or a WOOFY Passive program, the accuracy is going to be there. So if we were going to land on the moon and we were using energy modeling software, we would want to be in the Passive House.
Yes, you want to be accurate. Right. You don't want to send a $1 billion satellite to Mars and have some people working in centimeters and some people working in, inches, and then it crashes.
It's a trajectory.
That's actually what happened once.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Great. Exactly.
It crashed and they're like, what happened? They're like, oh, we didn't convert. Some people built it this way. Some people built it the other way. We put it together and we just lost that. I'm sure it was more than $1 billion because it was a government satellite thing. So I'm sure it was a lot.
Well said.
So is there a lot of, all of the interviews I have, I think, is this going to be beneficial to our audience? That's the first criteria, and that's what we go off. Everyone should know in first disclosure, though, I'm also selfishly using this for myself. I know that they're interested, but I'm interested in it, and I don't have a deep knowledge of it. So I'm just coming at you with maybe normal questions that anyone might have, but also that I have. That makes sense. Does local cities' jurisdictions, authorities having jurisdictions is the acronym that the textbooks like to use. Do they have an equivalent? Let's say you don't meet the R values or you want to do a res check or a HERS rating. Is Passive House allowed? And is it, if you meet Passive House, just like if you meet HERS, you're good? Or do they convert it like a Passive House score of whatever? I don't even know if it's 1 to 100 equals a HERS rating of 20. Can you expand on that general question?
The truth of it is that when you're looking at these models, the code and the real world's not really sure what to do with the amount of information that it kicks out and some of the details that it has. So, in fact, recently, Mainstream Corporation in Larimer County sponsored a code talk that said basically, hey, Passive House meets the energy codes. Why is it so hard for us to get these accurate heating and cooling loads through the permitting process? And the answer is because the critter looks so different that they're not quite sure what they're looking at. And unfortunately, we're such a geeky group of people, that gets excited about talking about BTUs and window details and this and that people instantly glaze over. So the answer is that we're working on that because we think it should be simpler and faster and easier to permit a building that actually exceeds code's expectations. We just have to figure out a way to communicate that to the local jurisdictions.
Yeah. So I was having a conversation because I wanted to do something a little bit different, and I wasn't going to meet the prescriptive codes. I was going to do performance. Yeah. And I go, what are you looking at for the HERS rating? And she answered honestly. She goes, I look at the cover sheet, and if it says pass, you're good. So it all boils down to convincing someone that all of your hard work is true and better than the code, and that there's a pass on the top of that paper, whatever that spit out. So that might help you, knowing that the building person actually reviewing it is looking for PASS.
I love it. Yeah, I need a little red check mark, in the boxes or something. Yeah. Yeah, it's true. It's true. To help them do their job easier, they've got a lot to do.
Oh, yes. Yes, they do. Yes, they do. So it's an ongoing process. You get this model. You talked about that, and it gives you this information, and maybe this isn't the right way to think about it, but I almost think the net result is obviously a better building, and it goes back to the details, and that informs where you place windows, how you detail stuff, what insulation. Is that the end result of it, or is the end result also an 80-page document saying things just like a HERS check or a manual JD&S? I don't even know. They probably don't even look at those either. They probably just look manual J. Do they have one? Great. Good.
Yeah, I think that's what it is. They have what is this PHPP? What is this Woofy Passive? Yeah. We have a summary page. Yeah. That kind of gives you those check marks. So, you have did you meet your primary energy demand? Green check mark. Did you meet your heating demand per square foot? Green check mark.
Yep.
Did you meet your cooling demand? Red check mark. Oh, why? Why do we have overheating going on here? So there's definitely a dashboard, and behind that dashboard could be 37 pages of spreadsheet grittyism.
Yep.
That could make even the hardest engineer just fall asleep.
Gotcha. So good. Well, I hope that the institute, everyone that you're working with, gets that accepted by the building code. Is here's the cover sheet.
Yeah, it makes it a little easier.
Here are 4 check marks. Because they are green, they are meeting everything you need to know. Yeah. Then hopefully they say, oh, great, and give the thumbs up. So let's pretend you're working on a house. Let's just say a house. Mm-hmm. What are the active, and you already went over inactive, but you could touch on that, systems that you are incorporating into the building to make it a passive house?
And that's a great question because it opens up the fact that Passive House is very open. There's no key ingredient. You're not going to come sit in our office and have us tell you what kind of wall assembly you have to choose. It's more about how. We have a rammed earth passive house. How? The client's first question was, can we? And we said, you always can. The question is, how? So it's really, you can take a lot of, and it's a negotiation really with the energy model. I really want these west-facing windows. Okay, put a R100 under your slab. Does it meet the model now? Yes or no? If not, try another. So you're really working with vernacular as it ties into nature. And so that equation of balance, where what I want to see is also performing to the model the way it wants it to be.
Gotcha. So, you made a great point. And this is actually where I want to go into these details. West-facing windows, you said insulation under the slab.
That's unintuitive, isn't it?
It is almost, to me. It's like, oh, I think I'm 90% there, but I think you can close the 10%. Why are you doing that?
Well, and so that's just a random guess. It could be that we're going to add 100 in the attic in order to make those west-facing windows.
Yep.
Or that we have to put a 10-foot overhang so it doesn't overheat in the summer in order to meet the standard. So it's more about the negotiation of if. So if I have a really skinny building that's facing north and south, it's not going to grab a lot of that south-facing sun, but it may in fact overheat every night when the sun sets.
Yep.
If there's too much glazing. If there's not enough glazing, then we're not going to get enough heat. If there's too much windows, we lose too much R value. So this negotiation is a fine dance of the passive housers as they work those energy models, just to kind of overlay or show us where the yellow brick road is and get us to the Olympics with this certified passive house building.
Yeah. Are there people who want to utilize this system and the knowledge? Because as I'm hearing more and more of it, I literally thought what you explained was true, especially like, let's just say with a manual JD&S. Mm-hmm. They're putting in the furnace, a couple things, and then, here's the R values, here's some windows on these sides, and I might even be thinking of a res check. Mm-hmm. And it's getting you to like a 15% guess of where you're going to be, if that. Now, they don't say it like that, but that's in my head. I'm like, you're just saying, hey, it's good, mm-hmm. It'll work. This seems like, somehow whoever made this figured out how much sun heat, is coming, what the temperature is going to be, what that temperature is on different sides, all 4 sides, plus the roof, plus the ground temperature, what those wall systems, how they actually perform or leak, and then test that in reality and then change the system and update it so that it models that. It almost reminds me, I'm sure NASA has something similar when they're building a space station.
Oh, they've got to, yeah.
This is actually what's going to happen.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And just applying that level of thought, science, and detail down to a house.
That's it. I mean, and the goal was to heat your house with equivalent energy as a hairdryer, which actually there's a video out there that shows that actually being done. So, or 16100 watt light bulbs, such a micro load that you could have a party in the middle of winter and all of a sudden your house is overheating.
Yeah.
There's no energy is escaping the envelope.
Yeah. And is that the first big thing to tackle?
Well, it's holistic. So that's the first thing is that, when I first started studying it and looking into green building and things like that, Passive House is very holistic. So we're looking at everything in the energy model, and then we're looking at everything else, outside in the field, to the point where, we talk a lot about net zero and the severe reduction of energy, but what happens is on the inside, we have to prove that our set temperature, let's say in the winter, is 72, and in the weakest spot of the building, we need to show that it's no different than 7 degrees off that set point in the dead cold of winter. That's comfort. That's a huge dose of comfort. And on top of it, we've been proven to have cleaner air than any other building design. Yeah. And that's because we're removing negative pressure from the building as a source of ventilation. So there's these huge paradigm shifts that you encounter when you start studying the passive house.
Do you have any, this is a very general statement, and I know it's frustrating on both sides when an expert can't answer a general statement because everything is different, but it's also frustrating to get those questions also because how much does it cost to design a building?
Right.
Whoa, that's a can of worms there. So know that I know where my question is coming from. In general, do you have a reference just to get something solid in someone's head? Mm-hmm. A normal house of 2,000 square feet, I'm making up these numbers, you can correct, you could expect this much energy. If that same house was a passive house, and maybe it's percentages, it uses this much energy. What is that? What are those general numbers, percentages, ways of looking at it?
Yeah, primarily we're looking at the heating load. And so on top of that, once you reduce all that, everything else trickles down, except water, really. So water you look at separate.
Water usage.
Water
right?
usage, exactly. So traditionally, you're 70 to 90% less heating and cooling required in a passive house.
Gotcha. Does I guess I was going to ask if that trickles down to lights, but your lights, there's only so much you can do in a passive or non-passive house with LEDs. It doesn't have to be passive your light requirement is almost independent.
That's right. A lot of variables are being solved in the field, such as LEDs. Now that we have those options, those are standard loads that get input into an energy model. Similar to like Energy Star appliances. When you have something wacko like a hot tub or a kiln, we really drill into those at different level.
Gotcha. When you're looking at creating an airtight structure in conventional stick built, what are you doing differently to make it airtight?
We're identifying the specific materials in the assembly that are going to resist air in a way that's going to last for 100 years. So there's a lot of ways to do that, but one of the easiest ways to just target your shear wall. And then as we're looking out the window here of your garage, how that building's connected to the concrete is also a huge opportunity. So the air tightness of a building, again, is a holistic thing where we're looking at what your lid is, what your radon mat is, how all of those tie together, which is called continuity.
Got
So the air barrier continuity. And then what is the perm rating of all those materials? And is that going to increase or decrease our hydrothermal motion in our walls?
Do you typically in Colorado, we have our water vapor, house wrap on the outside, vapor air barrier on the inside. Do you keep that, or do you combine them all on one layer on the outside? Is that typical or not? Or
there's no one way. And so there's so many different ways to make an advanced envelope. You've seen probably 7 to 10 probably on your desk, where you could have ICF, SIPs,
right,
double stud, on and on. And so the location of all those is different, hence the 4-colored frog pen. Because each layer has to be drawn. So green is your vapor. Red is your air. Blue is your water resistive barrier. So your bulk water, which could be Tyvek, but probably isn't.
So I just picked it up. Thanks for bringing these pens. Blue is water.
That's right.
Green is vapor. Red is
air barrier.
Air. Yeah. And then black is just you're
taking notes.
Just taking notes. Very cool. Oh, that's awesome.
So those are the details you'll be producing or be identifying as a passive house, or when you're designing a passive house. You're going to call all those details out because those layers have to fit together with connection and consistency, which builds the continuity. So we don't have any air drips, air leaks, anything sneaking in. We know where everything's connected.
Yep. I think one thing that made people afraid of passive houses back in the day, well, there's probably a couple things. Probably people think it's going to be astronomical costs. Anything that is touting superiority, people immediately say, that's great, but how much does it cost? But I don't even know if, maybe we can address that. But the other thing was air exchanges and health. And you briefly just said great quality air. Was that an issue in the past? Was that a myth? What's happening now that's different from that, if it wasn't a myth?
Sure, and Mainstream funded some research kind of to uncover that. So some researchers have been to our buildings to check, and the results of those were not as good as that we'd hoped.
Yep.
But they didn't compare that to what's going on in average right now. So if we look at the whole gamut, like is a passive house air quality better than the average home? And it's hands down, it absolutely is. And the research supported that, is that the air quality in a passive house is better.
Yep.
But the thesis was, does it remove the contamination as fast as it should? And the answer is no. And that makes sense because most of our equipment isn't large enough to handle the air exchange that we need in a residence. So oftentimes you're finding things that are undersized. And so this year being the year of ventilation and COVID and fire, our phones are blowing off the hook because we're solving those problems. So COVID in particular is an airborne disease. And it's kind of like drinking backwash if you're sharing your beer. If you measure the CO2 level in this room between you and I, and it's higher than 800 ppm, well, then we're breathing each other's air a little bit.
Yep.
And so therefore our ventilation system would kick in and provide fresh filtered air. Well, a passive house is always doing that. A passive house is always removing the pollution from the polluted areas and putting fresh air in the areas where you need, like a meeting room or where you sleep. So allergy and asthma friendly buildings. No smoke and fire in the buildings. Anti-COVID buildings.
So is it smarter? Because what you said, our system, I almost guarantee you, is not measuring what you just said and then doing that. We're just sitting here 6 feet apart, something like that. But the passive house has that system in there.
That's right. It's
That's
just
part
a
of
standard thing.
Yep.
Is that we want to recover all the waste energy created by human activity, whether that's cooking or showering or just breathing. We don't want to just send that air out without taking the temperature first. So the energy recovery ventilation systems, which we prefer to use in Colorado because they also retain some of the humidity. So our passive house buildings will retain about 10% higher humidity level than the average building without adding humidity. It's just recapturing some of the humidity that you generate in the house. Anyway, so we're recovering all that energy and sending it back in a balanced way. All the buildings made to code are negatively pressurized. And that's what they consider ventilation, is if you take a shower, you turn on a bath fan and you send that air out.
Yep. Like everyone does here. Almost everyone listening is probably not in a passive house right now.
Right. So they take a shower, they turn it on, they do a no-no in the bathroom, they turn it on. When the shower's done or the no-no's done, they wash their hands, they leave the bathroom fan turns off.
Yep.
There's one problem. So the bathroom fan turns off is one problem. The second problem is when you turn that bathroom fan on, there's not a door or anything that opens that lets in fresh filtered air to normalize the pressure in your house. So when a house is depressurized,
You're right.
You're leaking radon. You're leaking wall dust. You're leaking dust from the attic, from fibrous insulations. And so in Passive House, we take authority in blocking those out.
And I want to just clarify this. So what's happening is that the pressure, and isn't it something like 27 pounds an inch or something at the atmospheric pressure? Anyways, it's more than what you would think because we're all living in it and it feels just fine, right? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But that pressure is putting pressure on your house, whether you know it or not, and then you're taking air out of the house, so it's pushing through on all sides that it possibly can, and it's capturing, like you said, dust from the attic, radon from the ground, and it's bringing those into your house without you knowing it. Is that a correct?
A house that's average, that most all of the people live in, yeah.
So then now in a passive house, it's airtight. So if you blow air out, it's not coming in from walls, floors, because you have that continuous. So where's it coming from and what's happening?
That's right. So the same amount of air comes in as fresh air from the ERV, the Energy Recovery Ventilation System. A Zender, creates this Zen room kind of concept where you have this constant, fresh, clean air. You don't have a new house smell. You don't have a new car smell. It just smells naturally fresh air. No allergies. And since the pressure is similar inside as it is outside, you've taken the stress off of your building. So when the sun rises and sets, the water doesn't want to migrate towards inside because of the depressurization, inside the building. It can stay pressurized outside the building, so to speak.
Does that energy, the ventilation system, does it have a air filter in it?
Oh, yeah. So we got HEPA filters coming in, Zenders, and they replace your bathroom fan. And so it's a fancy bathroom fan that saves 90% of all your energy and provides your bedroom with fresh, filtered, oxygenated air so people sleep better and fresh.
Awesome. So in my head, exploring this, with the listeners, we have the air tightness. Mm-hmm. We also have the thermal tightness. And I want you to touch on the R values. Then we have I want to call it the smart system, the smart air system, and the energy recovering system. Before we move on from that, let's talk R values. What R values are you typically seeing?
Sure. So you're going to see in the Colorado area, like right here in Longmont, let's say like a R40 wall, and you'll probably have a R60 to 70 in your attic. The interesting thing, though, is you're going to have sub-slab insulation similar to your wall. So like maybe it's a R40 on your wall slabs. And then under the slab, you might have like an R30, or you might have like 6 to 10 inches of foam, which isn't environmentally, sound to us greenies, but, we're working on alternative ways of using insulation and getting the foam out of the manufacturing,
Gotcha.
and application of our houses.
I was just looking up air pressure, 14.7 pounds per inch.
There you go.
I think I said 20 something, but 14.7.
Hey, that was close.
Yeah.
Decimals.
There you go. It's in the ballpark. I'll take that. Okay. So,
if we can clarify just a few things, because
yes.
There's these basic 7 steps that if you took the Passive House Kool-Aid, if you drank the Kool-Aid and you liked the Kool-Aid, which most do, like architects and builders and owners primarily are building these Passive Houses because they had to take matters in their own hands.
Kool-Aid is delicious too. So
yeah, I was a Kool-Aid kid too. Good job.
Yeah.
So there's these steps that you could apply to any building, though. So, and they're common sense too. They're kind of like what our grandparents taught us. Like, double pane windows or storm windows. So you have beefier windows and doors. So that costs a little more. You have sometimes twice the insulation. So that costs a little more. You've got this detailed air tightness, and that costs a little more. So in your envelope, which is interesting because the envelope, the things that you put into Passive House are kind of like your Sam's Club membership, where you're buying a discount on your groceries all year. Well, in Passive House, you're prepaying your utility expenses for the life of the building. So the insulation, it's forever. A good European window is going to last pretty much forever. All these major things. So that comes back to some of your mechanical talks. I'm getting off chart a little bit because I'm really talking about the 6 principles, which is you start with energy modeling. You're going to add the insulation level to the climate. So that's basically step 2, is you wouldn't be, wearing a bikini on a beach in Alaska because you would freeze. So let's not build a house in Florida over-insulated or under-insulated, for example. So you're going to break thermal bridges. That's step 3. Then you're going to have good doors and windows, step 4. And then 5, you're going to add that energy recovery ventilation system, which replaces your bathroom fan. And then you're going to look at all the appliances, and your electric load is 6, and then there's a 7th step too. So there's basically these 7 steps that can be overlaid on any building. On any builder could use these, and a lot of them are to the point where it's dangerous.
Meaning?
So if you go to a new home builder right now in a development and you ask them, do you build them tight? The builder's going to say, oh yeah, we build some of the tightest buildings here. And then you're going to say, well, do you have bathroom fans? And they say, oh yeah, we got bathroom fans. And then you say, where does the fresh air come in at when you turn on the bathroom fan? And that's where the conversation pretty much ends.
Yeah. It's like, enough to be dangerous, essentially. Also, too, I get the question about price a lot
about price
too, and maybe you'll have a better answer for this, but to me, it seems like a much better quality house, but also quality in the sense of air, livability, sickness, and all that. And I think some people always think about prices. Oh, if I pay double the price, am I going to get double the value? Or that's how they think in their head, right? Mm-hmm. But most people have bought cars, right?
Oh yeah, good comparison.
I've bought shitty cars because I was in college and poor, and I've bought cars that are twice as expensive as that. Trucks, things like that. Do they go twice as fast? No. Do they get twice as good gas mileage? No. Is it, I don't own a Lexus, but is it a Lexus and it feels much better and all the controls are perfect and it's not going to break down as much? Am I saving exactly as much as twice the cost on maintenance cost and hassle? Maybe not. But I'm 30 something years old. I'm gonna be in a Lexus. I'm not gonna be in a $2,000 junker Dodge, whatever from 1996. So I think there's a disconnect sometimes between, and it's just the way some people are thinking. Mm-hmm. Am I going twice as fast? No. Yeah. Am I getting twice as much gas mileage? No, but do you want to be in the Lexus? Or you want to be in the, whatever car you think is not great?
And how do you fit a client into that, without test driving that Lexus, or say, I think you're going to want the Lexus. And then you convince them that without even having to drive it. And here it is built, and it's supposed to act like a Lexus.
Well,
that's where that institute comes in. That third-party institute comes in and says, "Yeah, it's going to meet this. We've ran over the calculations, and the experience shows us." And
yeah, and the reason I bring up Lexus is because I just bought. Well, not recently. My wife has a Kia, and she used to have. I won't even name something. What it was before. And this one's nice. It has all these features, tinted windows. Blah blah blah. Mm-hmm. But we test drove a Lexus, and it was a little bit of a. Later, it wasn't as new, and we decided not to get it. But after getting that Kia and realizing how nice all these features are, you go, oh, the features in that Lexus though, and Lexus isn't even the pinnacle. That I was like, I can see how nice that car was after doing one step up, to do that other step up. But unless I did that test drive in that Lexus, how am I selling that? Like, no, you're going to like this better. This works better. It's a hard job. And I would admit that you got a hard job to sell that.
I mean, it might have been used to be hard. I think it's common sense now. And I think that the world's getting educated to the point where it's the same kind of paradigm shift as the organic food. Why would I want a bathroom fan in my house, knowing that every time a child used it, I'm bringing in more radon, or I'm bringing in wall dust, or I actually don't have any air coming in until someone, please open the door.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of common sense there, but so to dovetail into price. So price is elastic, right? Because if I want metal roofing, it's 4 times more expensive than asphalt. If I want real stone, lick and stick is 3 times more expensive than natural raw stone. If I want granite in the kitchen, and on and on. So can you do it affordably? Absolutely. People are all the time. Where are the places you save money? Those are the questions. Because everybody's going to want the granite. Everyone wants the leather or the leather seats too, right, in the car. Yeah. And they want it turbo too. So they want it to be comfortable. They want to be healthy and enriched in their lives. And Passive House is a good investment protector too, because again, you're prepaying your expenses down for the life of the building, really. So in an affordable Passive House, maybe you won't have radiant floor, which has a premium of about $30,000. Mm-hmm. Maybe you get the Vermont cast iron stove off of Craigslist for $1,400.
Yep.
And that's what you can do in a Passive House, because you don't have all the losses around every bedroom. So you can go to point distribution, heat load and cooling load, or central.
Yep.
Because you don't have the losses. That involves stacking and and shaping too.
Yeah. So. As an architect, I see a value in the system and the process and the steps that you laid out. But does anyone come, and this is a hard sell on me, but I almost like the ideas so much so that, hey, we want to go down this process. Mm-hmm. But we even realize, because we actually run the gamut. We run the gamut from $1 million homes with everything in it down to small additions to people that have a modest budget, but they realize these benefits and they have hard income limits. Mm-hmm. There is no changing their income. There is no changing this equation. And, they want some of this, but, they don't want the crappiest dishwasher in the world either, So have you seen anyone come that says, hey, we want to go through this process, but eventually we might realize, okay, we're not going to do double the insulation. we're going to do 1.5, 1.25. We'll do the continuous and the ERV, but we aren't going to upgrade the windows to double because it actually costs 4 times as much. So and all of a sudden, this seems valuable to me, but it's hard because the building officials aren't on the same page as, oh, we got a pass, fail, pass, fail, pass, but those 2 fails are still better than the code.
That's it.
But the building official goes, I don't give a crap. 1, we don't even recognize it, but 2, you got 2 Fs on there. So, but you get what does anyone do that and like, okay, we're going through the process, but we aren't meeting Passive House, but at least we did smarter.
Yeah, and you've got every like Passive House greenwasher kind of concepts where you got Mick Passive Houses, right? That's kind of the coin thing.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, us Passive Housers, it's really about doing the thought process right. Like, are we breaking the thermal bridges? Do we have inconsistent levels of insulation? Like, is it okay for your wall to go from an R10 to an R20? And in our mind, it's not. It should all be R20. It should be consistent and have perfect continuity, really.
Does it change on where you're facing?
Not unless it's a window.
Okay.
If we can help it, we don't want it to change. And we want the window to be as insulative as the wall if we can. But, we're getting there. The answer is yes, a lot. There's bunches and bunches of people drinking the Kool-Aid and creating their dangerous science experiments, and they're also going to the professionals and engaging them. And hey, at the end of the day, let's face it, when you design a building and it looks beautiful and perfect, and you put it in the Olympic tryouts, which is the Passive House Planning Package or WIFI Passive, and you find out that it doesn't meet, you're still so close, so much better than the average building, looking at details that people aren't looking at that should be looking at. I encourage everyone to really put the Passive House principles on any building they design, and they'll make it better. They'll open their eyes in ways that they'll never build the same again.
Awesome. Well, Cody, this has been a very fun and informational segment. So I'm happy you came down. I'm happy we could do this in person, but I'll let you take us out. 1, if anyone wants to contact you, how to do it. Unless you don't want them to, then you can say, screw off, don't contact me. And then you can leave the audience with anything you'd like, any thoughts on Passive House or anything on life, whatever you want to do. The end of the show is yours.
Wow. Well, first you can find us at mainstreamcorporation.com. And the adjective is to liveutilityfree.com, because Mainstream Corporation didn't mean a lot to everybody, and we've been that for many years. So we help people live utility free. And I think important right now to know is that the air inside your building, the air inside your schools is really the contributor. Let's look at that. And you can do really a great job of ventilation with energy recovery. It doesn't cost a lot more. And, you get your CO2 levels down. And most important with that, once your CO2 levels down, everybody can start having fun again. So let's get smart again and start having more fun again and build buildings that are anti-COVID. So I think the Passive House industry at large is really doing well because it's anti-COVID. You're ventilating the building so well that, you're not breathing my air over there and I'm not breathing your air over there, and we can have a party at the bar. So
awesome. Thanks a lot,
Passive.
Cody.
Thank you.